So today I want to start off with a little test. By a show of hands, how many of you can see the number inside of this circle? Okay, what about this number? And how about this number? So for those of you who didn't raise your hands, you're probably just like me, colorblind. So I first found out that I was colorblind when I was about 4 years old. I went to my museum with my family, and I was shown the same Ishihara color test as you just saw. And basically, my entire family could see them except for me. And because of this, I went to their family doctor and found out that I was colorblind. So I'll talk about a little bit more about the Ishihara test a little bit later in my speech, but first, let me explain how one gets colorblindness and how one views the world with this color blindness. So what allows us to see colors are these cones in the back of our eyes. These cones receive 3 different wavelengths of different sizes: small for the blue light, medium for the green, and long for the red. So regular seeing people use these cones to produce an entire spectrum of color, the colors you see on a rainbow. So basically how it works is light enters in through the eye to the back, and right here we have the cones, which filters out the light and basically gives its color, which travels all the way up to the brain. So a mutation or a deletion in one of these cones is basically what causes color blindness. And depending on which type of cone is affected will depend on what type of color blindness you have. Now, this chart shows what you would see if you had this certain type of color blindness. So on the top we have a normal vision person, they see reds, greens, and blues all the same. But over here we have a protonomally colorblind person, which is basically a type of red-green color blindness. Over here we have a triatonomaly color blindness, which is a blue-yellow color blindness. And then we also have things like an achromatopsia color blindness, which is a total loss in color vision. So basically you only see blacks, whites, and grays. Now, I personally am a deuteranomaly color blindness, which is actually the most common, and we are sensitive to greens, reds, and purples lights. Now, although there are a lot of types of color blindness, not everybody can get colorblind, or become colorblind, excuse me. Color blindness is hereditary, which means it can only be passed down through family. What I have here is an example of a father in blue. He's a carrier of color blindness, which is represented by a circled X chromosome, and a mother who's not a carrier. So basically this says that their sons won't have color blindness, but their daughters will most likely will. And if you will direct your attention over to the CH family, it's basically the opposite, where the mother's a carrier and she passes on to her daughter, which then can pass on to her sons. This is actually the family that represents mine the most, because my grandmother had she carried the colorblind gene, who passed it down to my mother, who passed it down to my brother and I. And although my brother doesn't have colorblindness, he still carries the gene, so he can potentially pass it on to his children. According to Frank Swan in his issue of New Scientist, about 1 in 12 men and 1 in 50 women have colorblindness. It affects more men than women because the colorblind trait is found in the X chromosome. For those who aren't affected, there are many different types of tests to check for colorblindness. The most common colorblind test is the one that you all saw in the beginning, the Ishihara test. Dr. Shinobu Ishihara was a professor at the University of Tokyo who studied basically optometrics like these. Ishihara first published his test in 1917, and his test was basically what you saw, a colored number surrounded by different colored dots. Now, a colorblind person would see both dots as the same color, not being able to identify the number in the middle. This test is a fairly strong test, however, it's not perfect. Seeing that it was made over 100 years ago, about 20% of people with normal vision actually fail this test. And because of this, John Burr, who studied optics at the University of London, created the Color Assessment and Diagnostic Test, or the CAD for short. this test provides more accuracy, up to about 3 times as much. And so basically what this test is, you're shown an image of a bunch of pixelated gray dots, and a green square moves across the screen, turning to a blue or purple, I'm not really sure what color this is, and then turns back to a gray. And basically on computer calculations, it can show you whether or not you're colorblind with more accuracy, and also show if you have a special type of colorblindness. Now, colorblind tests are important because not only do they tell us we're colorblind, they can also tell us different things about our colorblindness. Now, what I mean by this is that different people have different types of colorblindness. So it comes with different advantages and different disadvantages. Disadvantage would be somebody who would want to become a pilot or a police officer or even a firefighter. To get into these professions, you need to take an eye exam, and basically being colorblind is a guaranteed fail. But however, a positive that comes along with being colorblind is that you can, again, see colors that most people can't. My buddy's uncle was colorblind too, and he basically was recruited by the military as a sniper because he could see people in camo that other people with regular vision couldn't. So as you can see, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages to being colorblind. Overall, colorblindness affects people around the world. Colorblindness is passed on through genetics and affects your cone's input of color wavelengths. There are many different types of colorblind tests, but the two most common would have to be the Ishihara test and the CAD test. Now, colorblindness also comes along with its advantages and disadvantages. So, if you didn't raise your hand at the beginning of the speech when I showed you the Ishihara numbers, then I advise you to take another test like the CAD or even speak to a doctor to find out what kind and if any colorblindness you have.